We are finally moving on to section 2 in chapter 12, where we start to talk about congruent polygons. Really, remember, a polygon is any shape that isn't a circle, okay? And we're mostly going to be talking about triangles here. So, first we have to talk about corresponding parts, okay? Corresponding parts are parts that, in two different triangles or polygons, but we're mostly talking about triangles, that are in the same place. So that if you looked at two congruent triangles and you put one on top of the other, for example, say we took ABC here and we flipped it over on top of DEF, then A and D would be in the same spot, so A is corresponding to D. They're in the same spot. The way you know this is because they're congruent. Notice that A and D both have one congruent mark. So A is congruent to D. C and F have two congruent marks. So angle C is congruent to angle F, but they're not congruent to angle A and angle D. That's why they have two congruent marks and A and D have one. Same thing with angle B and angle E. They have three congruent marks because they're congruent to each other, but they're not congruent to angle C or A or D or F. Okay? So our corresponding parts are congruent if our triangles are congruent, or vice versa. If our triangles are congruent, then our corresponding parts are congruent. Okay, so we're gonna do an example, and I'm gonna show you how to figure all this out and what's important with it all. Okay, but you need to write down this screen. Hit pause. Hit play. So we need to write a congruence statement. Okay, which means we're going to write that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. That's a congruent statement, okay? But we need to put our parts in the right places. I think it's easier to do the second part first, identifying all pairs of congruent corresponding parts. So let's start with our angles. And make this simple on yourself. Look for whichever one has one congruent mark. Start there. Angle L is congruent to angle R because it also has one congruent mark. Whoops. Wrong button, sorry. Okay, so then let's think about what has two congruent marks, which angle. So angle J must be congruent to angle T because it has two congruent marks. And then angle, I don't know why I keep changing colors, but why not? Let's see, we are down to angle K is the last one, right? And so it has three marks, so does angle S, so they must be congruent. Now we need to look at our sides, okay? So pick a side. Notice that JK has one mark and ST has one mark. So that would mean that JK is congruent to segment ST. Except that technically we need to put them in the same order. So if JK goes from 2 lines to 3 lines at their angles, then we need to say TS because T has 2, J has 2. So when we write them as sides, we need to make sure that the angles are also in the right place. Okay? So notice that J and T are both first because J and T are the congruent angles. So, that being said, erase a couple scribbles there. Let's then go to LK, which has two congruent marks, right? So if we say L, okay, I cannot write, I'm sorry. LK is congruent to, well, L has 1, so we need to say R, and then we're going this way, because that's the one with 2, right, to S. And notice that K and S are congruent, and we have K and S in the same place on our segments. Okay, this matters, folks. I know you think it doesn't, but it does. Okay, and then last but not least, we've got side, let's see, 3 spots. So JL is congruent to, and we know already that we want J and T, right? And JL has 3 and RT over here has 3, but we want it to be TR because we want the L and the R to be in the same spot. Okay? I know you are rolling your eyes and thinking this doesn't matter, but it really, really does. Okay? And then we can go back to the first part and write a congruent statement for the triangle saying that triangle, okay, and it doesn't technically matter where you start, J, K, L. I like to put them in alphabetical order to start anyway, okay? But then, if we say J, then J has to line up with T. So we have to say T first. And then we said K, so K has to line up with S, so we have to put S next. And then L and R both need to be last. Because when you read just a statement like this, if that's all you have, you can look at it and say, well, I know that J is congruent to T because they're in the same spot. Okay? And that's going to matter a lot to you here in the future in chapter 12. So, I skipped that one because I don't want this video to be too long, but we can do it in class if somebody asks me. So, where does this matter for like the math of it all? Well, in this diagram, we know that DEFG is congruent to SPQR. There's no little like triangle or quadrilateral or anything. Once you get past a triangle, so this is a quadrilateral because it's got 4 sides, you just put all the letters, and we know it's a quadrilateral because there's 4 letters. Okay? So we need to find the value of x. Right, well, where over here is, oh, there's x. Okay, x is in this, on this side right here, QR. Okay, so we've got segment QR, and we need to know what is QR congruent to. Well, it's harder to tell in this picture, I think, but if you go over here, QR is the last 2 letters of our name. So it must be congruent to the last 2 letters of the other name. So that means it has to be congruent to the FG. So that means we can say 2x minus 4 is equal to 12, solve, divide, and x equals 8. Okay, so I'm just going to write that up here, x equals 8. And I'm going to erase some of my scribbles in a minute. Okay, so x equals 8. Now, we need to do the same idea, but we need to do it for y. Where's our y? There's a y right there in that angle Q. Okay, so we need to know angle Q is congruent to what? Well, let's see, in our letters here, Q is in the same spot as F, so angle Q must be congruent to angle F. Okay, so that means we can say 6y plus x equals 68, except we know that x equals 8, so we can put an 8 there instead of the x to solve for y. So subtract 8, 6y equals 60, divide, and y equals 10. So That's why it matters that you have things written correctly in the right order, because you won't always be able to tell by looking at the picture what's congruent to what, but you can always tell by the statement. Let's try another one real quick. Trying to make these videos not too long. So we need to find the value of x. Okay, well there's the x over here on MQ. So let's figure out MQ, segment MQ is congruent to, let's see here, MQ, well backwards is there, so that would be ED, right? So ED is there. So that means that we can say that x minus 2 is equal to 8. Add the 2 and x equals 10. So x equals 10. Okay. So then we need to find y, which is here at NP. So we can say NP, oh, sorry, not N, I'm okay. Angle P is congruent to, well, there's the P at the very end, so it must be congruent to angle G at the end there, which is 84. So we can say 3x plus 2y equals 84. And we know that x equals 10. So 3 times 10, so we can say that 30 plus 2y equals 84. Subtract the 30, 2y equals 54. And y equals 27. Check my math on that, but I think that's right. Let me know in Zoom what your questions are. Have a good day.